I am grateful to today's speakers for their information on the situation in the gas sector. Over the past few days, we, as well as many of our colleagues, have been stunned by new data on the record scale of gas hunger. The signals of my insistent appeal to Israel to immediately stop the collective punishment of the Palestinians were heard from different capitals of the world, including Moscow, as well as the headquarters of international organizations, regional organizations, and representatives of the World Organization around the world. In addition, the world demands from Western Jerusalem the realization of the non-alternative peaceful settlement of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, which would open the way to the establishment of a true peace and security in the Middle East. This is the only scenario that meets the interests of both Israelis and their neighbors. Today, almost 2 years after the start of the bloody war in Gaza, it is really difficult to find the right words to describe the scale of the destruction and human suffering in the sector. The last comments of the UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, who described the situation in Gaza as hell, the UN Commissioner-General, Filippo Lazzarini, in turn, described the situation in Ankara as borderline genocide, and the violent displacement of the population was put in line with ethnic cleansing. Such statements, in other cases, quite restrained in the assessments of the leadership of the World Organization and its profile units, are confirmed by daily reports from Gaza about the deaths of dozens of civilians. Only the day before yesterday, more than 70 people were killed in the Gaza Strip by Israel's unilateral strikes. And 2 days ago, literally live, as a result of the attack on the southern enclave, the Al-Nasser hospital was destroyed, and more than 20 people were killed, including 5 journalists. At the same time, judging by the video footage spread in the media, a cynical tactic was used to strike a second blow at the moment of the arrival of the rescuers. Even Benjamin Netanyahu has already indirectly recognized Israel's responsibility for what happened, calling it a tragic incident and promising to conduct an investigation. Mr. Chairman, we would like to focus separately on the activities of the so-called American-Israeli Humanitarian Fund for Gaza. Since the launch of the fund in May of this year, the situation has acquired a tragic and absolutely unacceptable nature. According to various estimates, more than 1,800 Palestinians have died trying to receive humanitarian aid. Of them, at least 1,000 people are in the immediate vicinity of the distribution points controlled by this pseudo-humanitarian structure. According to the incoming information, the shooting at civilians is carried out not only regularly, but also aimlessly. People brought to despair spend the night at the food distribution points, and in return they receive bullets. This is not a humanitarian mission. This is violence disguised as good intentions. The policy of intimidation and suppression directed against the defenseless civilian population is carried out under the guise of humanitarian activities. Such methods are unacceptable. We have no doubt that the operation of the fund in its current form is dangerous and does not comply with the universally recognized humanitarian principles, and it is pointless to deny this. Mr. President, on this basis, I am seriously concerned by the information that has appeared in the media that the UN Secretary-General, allegedly under pressure from the United States and Israel, has taken upon himself the undisputed obligation to reduce the degree of rhetoric in relation to the activities of the fund. As it were, we note that since August, the UN Humanitarian Summit has in fact ceased to mention the operation of this structure. We hope that these statements do not correspond to reality. We are convinced that the UN Secretary-General cannot and should not act according to the principles when humanitarian aid is turned into a tool for blackmail. We expect that the UN Secretary-General and the UN Humanitarian Council will consistently and uncompromisingly stand for humanitarian aid to be in strict compliance with the norms of international humanitarian law and the principles of humanity, impartiality, neutrality, and independence. Mr. President, the monstrous statistics of the victims of the Israeli military operation in Gaza, which have already killed more than 63,000 Palestinians, do not stop the Benjamin Netanyahu government which has taken a course to clean up the densely populated city of Gaza and establish total control over the entire sector. The Western Jerusalem and the opinion of the vast majority of members of the international community do not diminish. We would like to remind you that on August 10th, during the non-continuous meeting of the Security Council, almost all delegations, including those on behalf of the Arab Muslim world, condemned Israel's new escalation, emphasizing the increased risks to security, not only for the residents of Gaza, but also for the Israeli hostages held there. It is also striking that the operation to capture Gaza was launched against the background of the agreement of Hamas on the last offer of the mediators to free the hostages and temporarily cease fire. We closely monitor the diplomacy of the mediators, including the efforts of Washington. To be honest, we see some discrepancies in the assessment of the course of the negotiations. We hear from our American colleagues all the time that Hamas refused the deal. At least this is what the US delegation is trying to convince the Security Council over the past several months. At the same time, there are signals that the movement is ready for the deal. But Israel either rejects the offer of the mediators or simply increases military action on the ground without demonstrating real interest in the agreements. The latest was publicly told yesterday by Qatar's foreign ministry, which, along with the United States and Egypt, are in the process of negotiating the deal. Colleagues, we have been hearing about American aggressive diplomacy on the ground for many months, but as we once again regret to say, it does not give us reliable results. We urge our American colleagues to think not only about the interests of Israel, which they defend with demonstrative zeal, but also about the fate of the Palestinians, whose lives and future today largely depend on the actions or inaction of the Council. Only multilateral diplomacy, which we strongly urge our American colleagues to join, can and should give a chance for the survival of the two-state formula. This principle, enshrined in the profile resolutions of the Security Council and the UN General Assembly, is really under threat today. The reason for this, as in the case of the man-made humanitarian disaster in Gaza, is the contradiction of international law and Israel's policy on the creation of new facts on the ground. The most resonant was the recent decision of the High Committee on Planning to approve the construction of a settlement in the E1 zone on the western bank of the Jordan River, to the east of Jerusalem. We all understand that the implementation of this large-scale expansionist project will disrupt the continuous territorial integrity of the future Palestinian state, splitting the western bank into two enclaves, isolated from each other. In this regard, it is not only the plan itself and the ambiguous statements of the Israeli officials that are frightening. For example, the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, directly stated that the plan of construction in the E1 zone will bury the idea of a Palestinian state, but also that such provocative steps are supported by some American high-ranking diplomats. Thus, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mr. Mike Huckabee, noted that the construction of the E1 zone allegedly does not violate international law. Such an opinion directly contradicts the fundamental documents of the Middle East settlement, as well as the recent decision of the Council, including the resolution of the Security Council 2334. Mr. Chairman, in conclusion, we would like to confirm our unwavering position in favor of the fact that only the diplomatic settlement of the E1 zone can satisfy the legal concerns of Israel in the sphere of security, as well as the just desire of the Palestinian people for their own state. The alternative to this is further isolation of Western Jerusalem in the international arena and the increase in the number of victims among the peaceful Gazans and Palestinians. Israel does not solve the problem of its own security, but only postpones it, and this is a harmful and irresponsible policy. Thank you for your attention.